The year is 1443, and you are 12 years old. You do not yet understand that your body is not your own. You stand inside the great hall of Bletsoe Castle, its thick stone walls breathing dampness into the winter air. The rushes beneath your feet sprinkled with mint and rosemary to mask the odors of unwashed men, and wet wool crackle under the weight of boots and the shuffle of fur-lined cloaks. Candles gutter in iron sconces, their light dancing over the faces of lords and bishops who speak of you as if you were not present, as if you were a prize mare whose breeding must be arranged for the greater good. Your name is Margaret Beaufort, and though noble blood runs in your veins, you are learning the cruel truth. A girl's birthright in 15th century England is not freedom, but currency. Around you, the men weigh that currency lands in Somerset, Devon, and Dorset, an inheritance that makes you one of the wealthiest children in England. Wealthy orphans are not envied. They are hunted. At the head of the gathering, William de la Pole, Duke of Suffolk, gestures toward you with a jeweled hand. The firelight catches on his rings as he proclaims, "The girl brings substantial holdings. Her inheritance secures our cause." His words echo through the chamber, heavy with the authority of a man who has never once questioned his right to decide another's fate. You want to ask, what cause? Whose cause? But 12-year-old girls do not interrupt the affairs of men. Your eyes find John de la Pole, Suffolk's son, your intended husband. He is only 14, awkward in his youth, his hands too large for his thin wrists. When his gaze flickers toward you, it lasts only a heartbeat before he looks away, cheeks flushed. You see no malice in him, only the same helplessness that lives inside you. He, too, is a pawn, but unlike you, he will one day inherit lands and titles in his own right. You will merely transfer yours. The great hall has witnessed countless such bargains before. Its tapestries faded depictions of hunts and triumphs watch silently, as if mocking the proceedings. You understand, dimly, that you too are prey, hemmed in by hunters who will not let you escape. The wedding takes place on a February morning, frost clinging to the earth like a scattering of pearls. You wear a gown of deep blue silk, the color of royalty, its weight alien upon your small frame. The headdress pulls uncomfortably at your scalp, making you feel less like a bride than a child dressed in a costume too large. The chapel is small, its chill piercing through the thick walls. Painted saints look down from the walls, their gazes cold, as though they too disapprove. Kneeling on the stone floor, your knees ache as the priest begins the ritual. John's voice cracks on the Latin vows, "Ego Johannes accipio te Margaritam in uxorem." I, John, take you, Margaret, as my wife. You repeat the words in a steadier tone than your trembling hands suggest. Ego Margareta accipio te Johannem in maritum. They taste like ashes, but you have been trained since infancy to do your duty without question. And so you do. That night, the law demands consummation. Children too young to understand the meaning of the word are nevertheless pushed into the chamber, told to perform an act that binds them in the eyes of the church. It is a contradiction so brutal it scarcely bears belief. A marriage valid in law, but void of consent, a sanctified contract of harm. Margaret Beaufort's childhood ends that night not with a scream, but with silence. For silence is what keeps her alive. In the months that follow, you live as a daughter-in-law in the De La Pole household. You sit at the high table in elaborate headdresses, rich fabrics draped over your narrow shoulders. The choicest cuts of meat and spiced dishes are placed before you, tokens of your status, yet you do not choose what you eat nor when. You do not choose anything. You are spoken to only when required, your voice trained to answer politely, and no more. Every aspect of your life is managed like estate accounts, recorded, monitored, controlled. You are not yet 13, and you are already a commodity whose value others exploit. But you watch, you listen, you learn. At banquets, when knights and lords speak of campaigns and alliances, you note who commands respect, who rules by fear, and who is merely ornament. Even as a child, you sense that knowledge, quietly gathered, silently stored, may one day be your only weapon. For now, you endure. A girl bound in silk and chains, staring out the narrow windows of Bletsoe Castle, wondering if the frost on the fields feels freer than you. The year is 1444, and the news arrives like a draft through a shuttered window. Your husband, John de la Pole, is dead. Fever took him swiftly, before his 14th year had run its course. You, Margaret Beaufort, are 13 and already a widow. The household receives the announcement with somber ritual, yet beneath the bowed heads you sense calculation. For your marriage had never been consummated in the full legal sense, and so your vast inheritance is not absorbed into the de la Pole family. You are again the wealthiest unmarried girl in England, but wealth is not freedom. Wealth is a beacon that draws predators. Suffolk, your guardian, delivers the news without ceremony. He enters your solar where you sit with needle and silk thread, embroidering saints onto altar cloths, a symbol of domestic virtue. His words are simple. Your husband is dead. Fever took him in the night. You pause, but you do not look up. The needle continues its path, golden thread shining against the fabric. You have learned that showing sorrow or fear in front of powerful men only makes you pray. Suffolk studies you the way a merchant studies a jewel, weighing value against fragility. Your composure pleases him. Your mourning period is permitted, but controlled. The black gowns, the prayers, the bowed head, all observed for appearances, but Suffolk makes clear it will not last long. Arrangements will be made, he tells you. Arrangements, always arrangements, never choices. In those months of widowhood, you taste something unexpected. Not liberty, but a shadow of it. You remain under Suffolk's authority, but in the absence of a husband, you are allowed space to learn. Tutors arrive to instruct you in Latin and French. You master declensions and conjugations with the fervor of one who knows knowledge is armor. Latin opens the door to law, scripture, and the secret codes of governance. French, elegant and courtly, offers entry to diplomacy. You study estate accounts, the neat columns of rents and dues, understanding for the first time the weight of your holdings. Thousands of acres of farmland, quarries that supply stone, forests that yield timber, rivers that power mills. You begin to comprehend that your father's legacy is not merely land. It is power, raw and dangerous. Yet with each lesson, the truth sharpens. The wealth you study will never truly be yours. It is bait hung around your neck. To marry you is to seize that wealth. To refuse is treason against the order of things. You feel the invisible chain tightening, linking your body to every acre of Somerset soil, every river crossing in Devon, every tenant farmer in Dorset. One spring afternoon in the herb garden of Bletsoe, your mother comes to see you. Margaret Beauchamp has lived this same story before married young, bartered for alliances, surviving not by choice, but by endurance. Among the lavender and thyme, where the air is thick with fragrance, she speaks with quiet urgency. Your inheritance is both your strength and your chain. It will make you influential, but it will never make you free. You listen, hands folded, eyes downcast, but inside you turn the words over like stones in a stream. What if I refuse to marry? You ask, voice low. The question is dangerous, almost rebellious. Your mother's eyes narrow with both love and resignation. Then your wardship would be sold to another lord. He would force you to the altar or strip you of your lands. A woman's inheritance exists only so long as she remains obedient. The herbs around you sway gently in the wind, their scents forever burned into your memory as the smell of confinement. You understand now. Disobedience means ruin. Compliance means survival. And survival is all you have. The wider world does not pause while you learn these lessons. England groans under the weight of weak kingship and factional rivalries. The wars of the roses stir like a storm on the horizon, though you cannot yet see its lightning. At court, whispers travel faster than parchment. Alliances shift like shadows. And in this shifting ground, your name is once again placed on the scales. By autumn of 1445, word arrives that the king himself has taken an interest. Henry VI, young and unsteady upon his throne, influenced by his advisors, has granted your wardship to Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond. He is nearly a decade older than you, son of Owen Tudor and Catherine of Valois, the widow of King Henry V. His blood ties to the royal house make him valuable and dangerous. You are 14 now, no longer the child bride shivering in blue silk, but still young enough that your body bears the fragility of youth. Yet the negotiations are swift. At Westminster Palace, you stand beside towering pillars, watching men bargain your inheritance as if it were grain. Edmund Tudor speaks with confidence. The girl's lands will provide income enough for my household and support our position at court. He glances at you briefly, like a man appraising a fine horse. You are healthy. You are wealthy. You are everything he desires in a wife. And so, without consent, without choice, your fate is sealed once more. The wedding is held in the year 1446, when you are 14. This second marriage is grander than the first, for Edmund Tudor's bloodline ties him to the royal family, and every nobleman in the kingdom knows that this alliance will shape the balance of power in the years ahead. You are draped in cloth of gold, a gown heavy with embroidery and weightier still with symbolism. Upon your head rests a circlet of jewels, dazzling to those who gaze upon you, but oppressive to the girl forced to wear them. The chapel is crowded with noble witnesses, their murmured Latin prayers mingling with the crackle of torches. The Bishop of Winchester presides, his solemn tone binding church and crown together in this transaction. Edmund speaks his vows with a steady voice, confident and possessive. When his hand covers yours to place the sapphire ring upon your finger, the gesture feels less like union than possession. The gold presses into your skin, the stone too heavy for your narrow hand. It will never stop weighing you down. That night, the marriage is consummated. This time there is no question of childhood shielding you. You are considered old enough by medieval law, though your body is still tender with youth. Edmund Tudor is a man of experience, a soldier and courtier, and he knows exactly what he is claiming. For you, the encounter is not passion, but surrender, an obedience demanded by both law and church, sanctified by ritual but hollow of affection. The memory will linger like a scar beneath your skin. Life with Edmund Tudor at Caldecott Castle in Wales teaches you swiftly that you are no partner, only property. The fortress, built for defense rather than comfort, echoes with the clash of ambition. Edmund reorganizes your estates immediately, stripping away Suffolk's stewards and installing his own men. The rents, the harvest, the revenues of your vast lands, all diverted to fuel his campaigns, his soldiers, his political maneuverings. You watch, silent, as everything your father left you becomes coin in another man's hand. But you are no longer the child who only listened. Now you begin to observe with calculation. You study Edmund's dealings, learn how power is exercised through men who collect rents, how loyalty is purchased not with promises, but with coin. At meals in the draughty hall, where banners hang limp in the smoke, you say little, but you hear everything. You note which lords carry weight with Edmund, which ones linger near him out of fear, and which ones drift away when his back is turned. Knowledge, you remind yourself, is power, even if wielded only in whispers. England itself trembles during these years. Henry VI grows increasingly unstable, his mind slipping like a candle burning down to nothing. The realm splits into factions, Lancastrians and Yorkists, noble houses sharpening their swords for war. Edmund Tudor, loyal to the Lancastrian crown, throws himself into the fray. You, Margaret, are caught in the undertow, a girl bound by vows but swept into battles not of your choosing. It is during this storm that you discover you are pregnant. You are only 13 when your body first weakens with sickness, though Edmund and the household midwives declare it a blessing. For you, it is both triumph and terror. Triumph, because to bear a son is a wife's highest duty. Terror, because you understand the danger of childbirth at such a fragile age. Too many women die in labor. Too many children are buried before their names are spoken aloud. Edmund is absent for much of your pregnancy, consumed by the rising tensions of war. You endure the swelling months alone in the draughty chambers of Pembroke Castle, attended by midwives and servants, but deprived of comfort. Whispers in the halls remind you constantly of your vulnerability. A girl, a widow in waiting, pregnant with the heir of a man who may not live to see the child's face. The fear becomes reality in August 1456. Edmund Tudor is captured by Yorkist forces, imprisoned at Carmarthen Castle. Fever strikes, and within weeks, he is dead. You are 6 months pregnant, barely 14, and once again widowed. The news is delivered to you without gentleness, a statement as cold as stone. Your husband is gone. Grief is not allowed. You sit in silence, hands folded over your swollen belly, feeling the faint stirrings of life within you. In that moment, you realize you are more than a widow. You are the guardian of a dynasty not yet born. The child inside you is now everything. On a bitter January night in 1457, labor begins. You are carried to a chamber in Pembroke Castle, its walls thick with the chill of winter. The midwives prepare herbs, whisper prayers, and brace themselves for what they know will be a dangerous ordeal. You are 14 years old, your body slight, your bones too narrow. The hours drag into agony, each contraction tearing you apart. At times, your vision blurs, and the women around you whisper that both mother and child may be lost, but you refuse to surrender. At last, the child emerges, a boy. Small, red-faced, and screaming, but alive. You name him Henry in honor of the king, a gesture of loyalty that is also a plea for protection. This frail infant will grow to be Henry VII, the first Tudor king of England. But in that moment, he is only a newborn whose survival rests in your trembling arms. Your own body pays the price. The birth leaves you worn and weakened, so damaged that you will never bear another child. The physicians and midwives do what little they can, but their remedies are herbs and prayers, not cures. The pain lingers, becoming a permanent reminder of the night your destiny and England's was written in blood. You are 14 years old, a widow once more, and the mother of a boy who may inherit a crown. You know only this: the world is already watching him, and through him, watching you. The year is 1458, and you are 15. You have already been twice a bride, twice a widow, and endured childbirth that nearly ended your life. Now, holding your infant son Henry, you know one truth above all others. Survival depends on protection, and so once again, you are given in marriage this time to Sir Henry Stafford, younger son of the Duke of Buckingham. This marriage is different. The ceremony is smaller, quieter, without the pageantry of Westminster or the sapphire ring of Edmund Tudor. It is not the union of dynasties, but of necessity, a shield for a girl and her child in a world where widows are vulnerable prey. Stafford is older, nearly 30, but unlike Edmund, he brings no hunger for domination. He treats you with a measure of respect, even affection. For the first time, you feel not entirely like a possession. Life with Stafford provides a fragile stability. His lands, though not vast, are secure. He does not strip your estates or treat you as a purse of coin. Instead, he allows you to raise your son, Henry, in relative safety. In the quiet halls of Woking Manor, you begin to breathe again. You devote yourself to study, to managing household accounts, to building the careful networks of loyalty that will one day become your greatest weapon. But outside your walls, England bleeds. The wars of the Roses intensify, battles tearing the countryside apart. Yorkists and Lancastrians clash in an endless struggle, and each victory is as fragile as frost in sunlight. At Coventry, at Towton, at Northampton, the ground drinks the blood of thousands. Families are split, brothers fighting brothers, as allegiance shifts like the wind. You watch, listen, and learn. While men clash with swords, women weave alliances through letters, marriages, and whispered promises. You begin to master this invisible battlefield. Servants carry messages, retainers whisper secrets, and you, Margaret, turn each fragment of information into strategy. You learn which houses lean Yorkist, which cling to Lancaster, which lords can be bribed, and which priests can be trusted to carry a sealed letter. You discover that influence can flow not from the blade, but from the pen and from the purse. When Henry Stafford rides to war, you remain behind, but his absence does not mean passivity. You manage estates, oversee rents, direct resources. Each ledger you balance, each steward you discipline, is practice for the greater campaigns ahead. You are still young, but you are no longer merely prey. You are preparing to be a player. For 13 years, your marriage to Stafford grants you a rare gift: continuity. You are no longer shifted from household to household like cargo, no longer forced into vows before you understand their meaning. Within this stability, your son Henry grows, and with him grows your determination. You see in his eyes a glimmer of destiny, though the crown he may one day claim is obscured by the smoke of civil war. But fate is relentless. In 1471, after the brutal Battle of Barnet, Henry Stafford is gravely wounded. His injuries linger, festering, and by autumn he is dead. Once again, you are widowed. You are 28 years old, and the brief years of stability are over. Yet this time is different. You are no longer a child widow, shuffled into the next bargain. You are a woman with experience, with knowledge, with a son whose survival now drives every breath you take. You understand the board on which the game is played, and you are ready to play it. Your fourth marriage is not born of fear, but calculation. In 1472, you wed Thomas Stanley, Earl of Derby. A powerful man, cunning as a fox, Stanley has survived every turn of fortune, by bending but never breaking. He is a master of pragmatism, aligning himself with whomever holds the crown. Some call him opportunist, others traitor. You see something else, a man whose instinct for survival matches your own. This marriage is a partnership. Stanley provides protection, influence, and the cover of his power. You bring wealth, intelligence, and the burning determination of a mother who will see her son crowned. Together, you begin to weave a network of alliances across the fractured kingdom. You learn the subtle language of diplomacy, how a gift of coin opens a door, how a carefully chosen word suggests loyalty without binding you to treason, how silence itself can be a weapon. You master patience, waiting for the right moment, enduring the shifting tides of Edward IV's reign, and later, the ruthless grasp of Richard III. For the first time, you are not merely surviving. You are shaping events. Your letters cross the country, your agents whisper in noble halls, your coin fuels hidden causes. You walk the narrow line between loyalty and betrayal, risk and survival. Always, always, your thoughts return to one goal: the return of your son, Henry Tudor, from exile. The girl who once knelt trembling in blue silk is gone. In her place stands a woman tempered by grief and sharpened by necessity. You have been pawn, widow, mother, and now at last you are becoming what history will remember: a strategist, a kingmaker in a world that never intended to give you power. The year is 1483. King Edward IV is dead, and his young son Edward V never takes the throne. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, seizes power and crowns himself Richard III. The court whispers with fear, for even in an age of ruthless ambition, Richard's boldness shocks. Two young princes vanish into the Tower of London, and the shadow of tyranny darkens England. For you, Margaret Beaufort, this moment is both peril and opportunity. You are now 40, hardened by decades of survival, widowhood, and political maneuvering. You have endured losses that would have broken most women, but you have learned to see in every fracture a doorway. In Richard's brutality, you glimpse a chance for your son Henry Tudor, long exiled across the sea, to stake his claim. The risk is staggering. To oppose Richard is treason, punishable by death. Yet you, cloaked in the safety of your marriage to Thomas Stanley, begin to weave threads of conspiracy. Through secret letters, whispered promises, and quiet gifts of coin, you build a coalition of nobles who despise Richard's crown. You pledge your son Henry as the true Lancastrian heir, and promise that if he triumphs, he will unite the feuding houses by marrying Elizabeth of York, Edward IV's daughter. It is a masterstroke, a union that could heal England's bleeding wounds. You are no longer pawn, widow, or silent observer. You are the architect of rebellion. In August 1485, Henry Tudor lands in England with a modest force. The stage is set for Bosworth Field. The armies clash, banners snapping in the wind, swords flashing under a gray sky. Richard III, defiant and furious, charges into battle with the cry, "A horse! A horse! My kingdom for a horse!" But fate, sharpened by your patient hand, has already chosen its victor. Thomas Stanley, your husband, stands at the edge of the battlefield, his troops waiting. For hours, he watches, weighing the moment. Then, at the critical instant, he throws his support to Henry. The tide turns. Richard is struck down, his crown taken from the battlefield and placed upon your son's head. Henry Tudor is now Henry VII, King of England. In that instant, you transform, no longer merely Lady Margaret. You are my lady, the King's mother, a title unprecedented in English history. Power radiates from you, not borrowed through husbands or guardians, but drawn directly from the son you have delivered to the throne. The girl who once knelt trembling at a child's wedding now sits at the heart of a dynasty. As Henry begins his reign, you walk the corridors of court with authority. Your council shapes marriages, alliances, and appointments. Courtiers bow not only to the king, but to you, recognizing the will that placed him on the throne. You wear sobriety like armor, black gowns, simple headdresses, a widow's modesty that conceals an iron will. Outwardly pious, inwardly relentless, you embody the paradox of medieval womanhood. Obedient in appearance, commanding in truth. Yet power has its cost. You have given everything to secure your son's future, your childhood, your body, your freedom, your happiness. You sacrificed each fragment of yourself to protect him. Now that he wears the crown, you are both triumphant and hollow. The victory is complete, but it has devoured you. In these later years, you turn increasingly to religion. You found colleges at Cambridge, support monasteries, and endow schools. You walk cloisters in quiet reflection, your lips whispering prayers, your fingers tracing the beads of your rosary. Perhaps this is faith. Perhaps it is penance for the bargains you struck, the lives lost, the compromises made in the pursuit of power. Your son, Henry VII, is a cautious, pragmatic king. He marries Elizabeth of York, fulfilling your plan to unite Lancaster and York. Their union births the Tudor dynasty, one of the most famous in history, producing monarchs like Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. You live long enough to see the foundations laid, though you outlive your son by only 2 months. The year is 1509. At 66 years old, you die, having seen your grandson Henry VIII ascend the throne. You are buried in Westminster Abbey beneath a bronze effigy, hands folded in prayer, face serene. But stone cannot capture the fire that once burned in you, the determination that turned a powerless child into a kingmaker. Your story is one of paradoxes, a life bound by men's laws, yet mastered by your own will, a woman broken in childhood, yet forged into steel by grief, a mother whose love became the engine of a dynasty. You were used as a coin in other men's games, but in the end, you played the game better than they ever imagined. Margaret Beaufort, the girl sold into marriage at 12, the widow at 13, the mother at 14, became the woman who shaped England's destiny. Her legacy is carved not only in the monuments of kings, but in the truth that even the most powerless can, with endurance and cunning, bend history to their will.